So I guess sort of the Brooklyn sound, if I was to, it has a sort of Afro diasporic because like I think you have to put in like the African elements, you have to put in some Latin elements, you have to put in some Caribbean elements um, in the sound vibration. Yeah, yeah, I would say that there's sort of a more ethnic-y approach. Yeah, maybe I would say that. Today I would say that. Tomorrow, maybe something else. But I think today that works.
Today is June 4th, 2021. Who are we speaking with?
Oh, you speaking with Ian Friday, your boy, your brother.
Salam alaikum. Question: is that your real name or a stage name? Real
After
talk.
all these years, you don't know. It is my real name, actually.
Okay,
My parents are Mr. and Mrs. Friday. My family, we are Fridays,
I
for
love it.
sure.
I love.
Plain
I'm sure
Jamaican.
you. I'm sure you had all kinds of stupid jokes growing up, and you just like, really? Is that what we're doing?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it sharpens your wit.
Mhm.
I can give it as much as I got it. So
I love it. I love
after a while, you just okay. You got that. I can't do anything about it because I came into this honest.
it. I love it. Describe the moment when you fell in love with house music.
Oh man. Okay. We jumping right in. Boom.
Boom! Just
Boom.
no
This is
foreplay.
this
No foreplay.
Bounce FM. We just bounce into it. Okay. Well, let me get my head into this. When I first fell in love with house music, because I fell in love with the culture that became house music before house music was born. So I've been in love with this thing for a long time before it was called house, as we know it now. Club music, I went to places, legendary places like the Paradise Garage and um, Zanzibar and all of that. Club Shelter in '91. So that was kind of, I guess, house really was born in the late '80s, right? Marshall Jefferson, I imagine.
Let me interrupt you. And I'm going to do this a lot. I'm not being rude. I just want to go deeper. So, you talked about you fell in love with the culture. What is that culture? Describe it for somebody that's never experienced it.
So when I talk about the culture um, that became house, we're talking about what are the elements of house music culture? From the dance, I came into the club scene dancing on the dance floor, not DJing in the DJ booth. When I talk about going to those places, we talk about um, community centric party environments. We talk about places where um, vulnerable and oppressed cultures felt safe. So we talk about sanctuary places.
In your last response, you talked about house music, and you saying you fell in love with the community versus the music initially. So, describe that what that community is for those that may not understand what you're talking about.
So I get what I said was that I fell in love with all things house before it was called house. So entering into a community that was welcoming, entering into a community that offers sanctuary to those communities that were not getting, that were feeling unsafe, unprotected. So, going to the Paradise Garage, which really was born out of the queer gay community as a place of sanctuary, safety, shelter, of joy, of freedom. Um, it resonating with myself as a youngster. The things, just being able to be free, being able to party and connect to music, and dance and movement. The freedom of black and brown bodies in space together was powerful to me. I mean, I certainly didn't have the language at the time as a teenager, but being introduced. I was in college. I was introduced to the music, to the vibe, to the scene um, of club culture, dance culture at that time for sure. And I felt like it resonated with myself as a New Yorker, as a first generation person. Um, you know, when you're first generation, you're in between spaces. So,
Explain
be,
that.
well, being a bridge between my parents, as both of my parents came from Grenada, and they went to America, obviously, like all immigrants, to make a better life for themselves. But not being American and me being born in America, I guess I had to translate things to them. It's like being a pioneer in your family. So school, food, music, all of those type of things. I had to find out for myself. I had to find my place. Um, for myself, translating my home culture, being raised as a Caribbean person, but in America, but in Brooklyn, but in New York, living in a neighborhood that was multicultural. So engaging with, this whole thing that I'm on now started at, growing up. We talk about global souls. Literally, I was living with people from India, from the Philippines, from regions of Africa, from Latin America, the whole African diaspora was in the neighborhood, along with folk that came from the South. Um, and so that real melting pots, you have to find your place in that, your comfort in that. And so when I was discovering the music that I liked, and certainly growing up when I did, dance hall was big. So, representing my home culture with pride. Hip hop was coming to the fore. So my love of break dancing, um, was there. And then house, or the things that were house before house was being played on the radio. So Larry Levan will be playing music, programming New York City radio. And so when you go to a space that sort of you found comfort in being different, right? I think a lot of times first generation folk recognize that they're in between worlds. So you're trying to find your place in the world. And so going to a place like Zanzibar, which was welcoming to all, Paradise Garage, welcoming to all, and then the music that spoke to, we are one. Come as you are. Be free and release. That kind of appealed to me in a deep way. And, you know, I'm an artist. So when you think about clubs like the area, I'll bring you back, where they had, they changed the set design of the club every month, every 6 weeks. That was because they had a sort of theatricality in mind. Larry Levan, we talk about, one of the foundational members of the culture called house. He had a theatrical way of presenting the music, which appealed to my creative side. So when I talk about culture of house, the spirit of house is welcoming. It is come as you are, be who you are, be free and comfortable in who you are. Um, at least that is it in this its spirit. Like anything else, when you put real people in the midst of that, then real people, politics, and dynamics also come into play. But at its heart, at its core, the beautiful thing about house is, you know, you could be yourself. You could, like you didn't have to follow any dance steps. If you dance off beat, it didn't matter. Just be who you are, express yourself as you are. And so that was its appeal to me.
That was fucking fantastic.
It's the truth. It's the truth.
What is your intention when you DJ?
My intention when I DJ, wow, I think it's the same intention that I have just as a person. I hope that music and art are tools to bring people together. A lot of times when I put up a flyer or present things, I do the hashtag music heals because there's healing in it. I think there's power when we come together, and I want to be able to reach all corners of the room. Certainly, from my own particular aesthetic, but also being able to pay attention and speak to the different energies that are in the space. So my hope is that we all can come together through music and dance. Um, Bodies in space together. I mean, it's interesting to have the conversation in the midst of this pandemic. Like I'm basically remembering. I haven't played for a crowd in person since last March. Um, but when I think about DJing, even now, live streaming, um, my hope is that we're creating a shared experience. To be poetic is like having a conversation, right? It's as basic as call and response. You know, um, I speak and then the audience responds, and the audience speaks, and then I respond, and we build energy that way. It's You see that in throughout the African diaspora, however we engage with one another, and so I feel like my mindset is rooted in that. Um, Ultimately, yeah. So that's how I approach DJing, um, and because I have a natural love of people, and I believe in the power of that art provides, music provides. You know, um, yeah, I try to be a vessel. Really, I try to
Well,
be open. I try to play from my heart.
I love that. I love that.
Hmm.
I want to go to something that was impactful to me, and then we'll go back to your journey in the beginning. So, I first discovered you when I was living in BK,
Hmm.
and it's like, yo, you got to go to these Sunday tea parties, man, with Ian Friday. Shit, it's live, YWCA, and it just reminded me of. Remember the first time you ever went to a club where it was popping, and you
Hmm.
just look around the room and you just like, oh shit. That's what it felt like. That wasn't my first time clubbing, but it took me back to that because it's rare that you have that elevated experience all the time, you know.
Right, right,
Um, and I remember, and I was living not far from a W. I mean, I could actually walk to the party.
right.
Yeah, and I remember, and it was fantastic to hear. You know, you played everything um, under the diaspora, so it's fantastic to hear like basically soulful house mixed with
Hmm.
everything. So
Hmm.
to hear our music, and then to see a rainbow coalition of black and brown bodies dancing in unison and
Hmm.
people losing their mind, it was incredible. Um, I have two questions. One is, tell us about the origins of that party, how that came to be. And then the second part of the question is, and this is my thesis, I want you to either confirm or deny this. I feel like something was happening in Brooklyn at that time. I call it the Brooklyn Renaissance. You know, um, it was you, there was Bang the Party, there was Frank's Lounge, there's Afro Mosaic Soul, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that was happening. Brooklyn Mecca, maybe a little bit later than that, right? Then there was, BAM was popping, and then the Africa Fest was popping. Then not to mention, like, when I think of house music, like people like Wumi and Arnold Jarvis were popping. Um, my thesis is that there was something of a Brooklyn Renaissance happening at that time, in that era. But anyway, talk to us about the Tea Party, how that came to be, your concept, the vision, and describe like a night there for someone who never experienced it.
Wow. Okay. So that's a full on question, which I'm prepared to answer. Thank
This
you,
isn't
sir.
this isn't every other interview show that you've been on. You know, I'm not gonna be asking you what your favorite color is.
Thank you, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you for stretching the brain. Well, let's start with the last part of your question with regards to the Brooklyn arts renaissance. There was a renaissance arts based um, that incorporated certainly all those events that you talk about, tons of parties, tons of art gatherings, um, tons of people like you were living in Brooklyn. Um, noted artists, were living in Brooklyn at the time. So when you have a group of creative people living in space, then creative stuff is going to happen, right? Because to be a creative is to be creative. So for me, like I think all parties have multiple origin stories, and the one that and then it'll change if you ask me the question tomorrow. It might be tweaked, but we started at Frank's Lounge. I had an opportunity to throw an event, right? And so at that time of my life, I was acting in plays throughout the city, writing poetry, DJing, and all of that, right? And I had an opportunity to create an event. I had done a series of parties with um, one of my closest, dearest people, Vashti Dubois, and we actually she founded, and I'm working with her in Philadelphia, a museum called the Color Girls Museum. Everything is related, right? So uh, we were interested in the early part of the 90s in having these parties, events that showcase our personal interests. So we were interested in, the Harlem Renaissance. So we were interested in black people doing cool and different things. So if we have friends and artists that were violinists, we would invite them to her place and have them do their thing, or singers or poets. Um, and so that was sort of in the back of my thinking, of my being as an artist, and give her the opportunity. I said, okay, well, I wanted to do something on Sunday, which is inherently spiritual, um, inherently cool, like all the Sunday events that I had gone to, because people, had to work on Monday, you're mostly going to have freelancers and creatives coming to a Sunday party. And so that's why I wanted to have it on Sunday. And I wanted to sort of explore all the things that I was interested in, certainly at the time. And, the first party, I worked the door, I hosted the event, I DJ'd the party, like my mom cooked the food. And so, as we talk about the spirit of house and the spirit, at least what I see as the spirit of house, um, which is about community building, I wanted to create a space where creatives and the community could come together. Like our mission was to build community in the presence of art. That was our mission as the Tea Party organization. Um, and so that was in me, right? Like I'm like, and I often say this in conversations. I always shout out my mom because she brought my sister and I to all kinds of things as kids: ballet, plays, opera, dance. And so that kind of cultivated an interest in me in the arts. And I wanted to share that love of the arts with people, right? And then when you're immersed in a wider environment that's having a renaissance, all those people are around. Erykah Badu is right there. Saul Williams is right there. Wood Harris is right there. Um, Other events are happening. I mean, two steps down, having an open mic on a Monday. So when you're an artist immersed in a scene with other artists, you do your part, right? And when opportunity, what they say, when it meets preparation, then success could happen. So, it was like lightning in a bottle. I didn't know it was going to become what it became. I knew that I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And, the energy of youth, then you start to build your tribe. Oh, yeah, I like that. Oh, yeah, I want to contribute. Oh, yeah, I want to help. Oh, yeah, I want to tell some people. Oh, yo, that's a cool situation to go to, right? So the Tea Party was an event that happened every Sunday. We produced a weekly event that included an open mic. We featured an artist, which could be a live band, which could be a noted poet. Because I'm interested in and knowledgeable of the history of things, we never thought that we were starting something. We always thought that we were continuing something. So, we would invite the last poets. We would invite Luis Riveras to be with us younger folk, to build a bridge, a creative bridge, um, and then create an environment where emerging artists could work on their craft, right? So we would have poetry critiques nights. Um, we would have health fairs because that's important in terms of building community, making sure the community is healthy and has the information it needs to sustain health. Um, and of course, I would DJ. Um, and it just was, man, I felt like I was in purpose. And so when you're in purpose with the thing that you love, you have all the energy in the world to do what's necessary to do it. And then I had the support. So it was, though I was a founder and visionary, there were folk that were in it. So I always used to say one person could knock on the door of opportunity, but a whole crew could knock the door down. And so we were crew. We were a motley crew of creatives, writers, singers, dancers, engineers. And it was like when they talk about you meet the friends you meet in college or the friends you have in life. Well, this felt like also college. Like the people I met there are the people that I've maintained as friends, and it was certainly very magical. So I don't know if I described the night, but we'd we'd open at 6. People would sign an open mic list. We do a DJ would do an opening set. We had chess boards and all that kind of stuff. Uh, we had vendors selling food, vegetarian food, and jewelry. We were bohemian uh, in a real way. We were Afrofuturists before it was even a term, right? um, and then after the open mic and the featured artists, I play, I play, and people would get free. And so when you talk about the fact that I played a wide range of music, that was because I had people in the building that was free and open. So if I could rock a fella record next to Don Cherry, some abstract cosmic jazz, I could play some soulful hip hop next to some blaze. It was that type of audience, and really, um, we go back to my own beginnings of New York City, where you go to a party and you could hear everything at the party. It wasn't segregated as it is now, where you're like, okay, I'm going to a house party, I'm going to a hip hop party. No, you go to a party and you hear the jams, and regardless of what they were, whether or not there was some soul, uh, hip hop, dance hall, it was everything in the mix. So as a DJ, especially then when you have the right audience in front of you, man, to be free musically, um, and for those folk to sort of be open musically, man, I go back to that call and response. So that was the experience. And when you talk about going to a spot and feeling the energy of my goodness, I think about the first time I went to the garage, and every time I try to promote, produce an event. Like I'm from myself, I'm trying to like get to that feeling, and so I mean, and not like as in a throwback kind of way, in a current way. Like you want to be able to create magic. You want to be able to have synergy with the people in the building, and so that means it's a heart opening. It's a spiritual experience. Ultimately, right? They talk about house as a spiritual experience, and whenever I try to play or produce an event, I want to make it. I want to make it resonate that way.
The Tea Party ran for about 6 years,
We ran for 6 years.
and then you decided to move on.
Hmm. I decided to move on. I wouldn't quite frame
That
it
was the
that
question.
way.
That was the question.
Yes. We started in 94, um, and we ended our main run 2000. I think, we went to another space for another year. Um, it ended, my mom passed away, right? So as she was, like at the at the center of my heart, um, she passed away. There was some new management at the Y, and it was all happening at the same time. Quite frankly, I buried mom. I came back to the very last tea party. I flew back. We buried her in Grenada, and I flew back Saturday, and we had the last tea party at the Y on Sunday. Hundreds and hundreds of people, and of course, emotionally, I wasn't even really there. To be frank with you, it was a difficult closing to a chapter. Well, like I said, it felt like purpose, and we were hoping to move into and purchase another space, but it just required a lot of me at the time, and it felt like the appropriate time to take a pause. And really, I thought it was going to be a pause, but you know, as things 9/11 happened, the city changed, uh, real estate in the city, forever changed. And then the heart to gather in that way, if you recall, New York after 9/11, it took years to sort of get the spirit back into it. Like tons of parties ended in that moment. Body and Soul, they stopped doing their weekly. Shelter, took a pause. So we followed suit and took a pause, and then I decided to pursue my acting career. I moved to LA, and that was cool. Um, but then we have to retool. Life goes on. Magic happen. Like the garage. We talk about the garage all the time. It was 11-year run. Zanzibar had its runs. Shelter had its runs. So I think, and I always say this, parties have a lifespan, events have a lifespan, and the Tea Party came to do what it came to do. Um, to build what it came to build. And I think, when you look at a lot of things that happened afterwards, what we did reverberated far into the future, and it's still with me in terms of everything that I've produced now. So,
I love that.
hmm
Uh, uh,
see, I got you. I got you. Now
no,
you
no,
got to think.
no. I have 100 on the list. I'm just trying to figure out the order and sequence with which I'm going to hit you with. So,
Oh, sugar.
yeah. Um, let's talk about. Let's go back to the garage and some of the earlier clubs.
hmm
Uh, I want to name a club and tell us your most vivid memory or story from that club. So for the garage, tell us a story, but give us a background in terms of garage was membership only. So how did you discover the garage? Which friend brought you there? What was it like walking in for the first time? What did you feel? What did you smell? What did you set? What was the sensation like? And then share with us a memory of the garage.
The garage. So I went to Wesleyan University, and the seniors, when I was a freshman, like any college student, you go to the parties, and one of the seniors, he was dressed in sort of the balloon pants, like the style of the day with capizios, and he was dancing, and I love to dance, and he was dancing, doing floor work and all this stuff. And I remember as 17 saying, like, what you doing? I mean, of course, it's hilarious to say it. You're 17 and you're looking at someone 21 and you're like, what's this old guy doing? And all of those seniors that threw parties and were DJs and all of that, they were great heads. So if you were going to go to a party, you want to hear garage style music. You were going to see garage style dancing. Now I had never gone, and so the same brother that I was looking at, um, I guess I don't remember the exact details of how a group of us got to go, but he brought us Milton Cornwell, who is still in the scene. I say his name all the time. He brought a group of us freshmen to the club. Um, and I had never been, I guess, again, I'm 17, maybe that summer before freshman year, maybe I went to Bentley's, and Bentley's was like a put on a jacket type of spot. DJ was it Sugar Daddy? Yeah, yeah, he was holding it down there, playing club music, playing the stuff on the radio. But that's where you could go as a young person. Going to the G was a whole other experience for sure. Culture shock, big club, bright lights, incredible sound system. One of my favorite songs, high school, was "Don't Make Me Wait," New York City Peach Boys. Um, you know, I went to. I'll say this as a setup to this. So for my birthday, my sister took me to a personal dining experience, and and I said to the chef, "It's as if I never ate food before. Like this food was so good." So when I went to the garage, it was as if I had never heard music before. Uh, like the sound system to my ears, the nuance in the music to my then ears, I had not heard music before. That's what it felt like. That was the in my belly. Um, Obviously everyone talks about walking up the ramp, and it was like going to. I mean, again, you have to think about also being young. So the mystery of going to a club, you know, in the village, like I didn't even know how to get there. Um, for a while. Like it was all like, oh my God, the city, for a Brooklyn boy. So you put that in context, and then you walk up the ramp is dark, with club lights, but it's dark, and then put your stuff away into the coat check, and then you go into this cavernous space, and it's like, my goodness, where am I? I'm in another world. Um, but one of my favorite Paradise Garage stories, um, and experiences, and it's kind of super influential to me as a creative, as a DJ. Um, Larry was playing uh, classic Dinosaur L record, Go Bang, and the club. At times he can control the lights, he can control the special effects, and we're talking about the '80s now, right? Um, so I feel like all my life I've been trying to get to this moment as a DJ. I finally could do it because the technology now allows me to do what he done innovated 40 years ago. And so he's playing Go Bang. He drops a movie screen in a club. He plays a clip from Star Wars. The fighter, like whatever, Luke Skywalker is in the ship, and they're fighting, and it's like pew pew pew, and it's literally, he is telling a visual, or he's connecting a visual with the sound, right? So you're seeing the spaceship fighting, and the song is called Go Bang, Go Bang, Go Bang. And it's a small thing, perhaps, but it was so impactful. It elevated the experience, right? Like, what DJ really has control over the environment and the experience, to be able to know, to feel that what he was creating was going to have that impact. It completely floored me, and it's a moment that I'll never ever forget. It's a moment that I've always aspired to be able to do in my way. And so that's the Paradise Garage experience for me. Legendary spot, foundational, certainly in New York City club culture, in global DJ culture for sure. A Brooklynite, another Caribbean cat, transplant. Um, you know, just again creating freedom, creating portals so that freedom could exist. That's what was happening at the Paradise Garage for me.
Same question, Club Zanzibar.
Zanzibar. Now, you know, I was such a Tony Humphries fan. It was crazy.
Everybody was. He
Oh
was
my goodness. You know,
TDK 90-minute cassette,
tons,
record, flip it,
tons,
record.
tons. You know, you I have so many shows from back in the day still on cassette. You take those cassettes and you go to the record shop and say, "Yo, what's this?" And yeah, it might come out a year, 2 years later, if it ever came out, and it wouldn't even be the version that he was rocking. Um, Certainly an incredible ambassador of the sound of the day, right? They call it the Jersey sound of the day. Um, a master craftsman. Um, Towards the end of the garage, Larry could be magical, he could be transcendent, or he could be in a mood where uh, he just wouldn't play well. Like that's what you got, at least in my time, right? In my time at the G, which is towards the end of the run. Um, Tony Zanzibar, incredible sound system. Um, and was always a great time. Always great music. Um, and then fueled by the fact that he was killing on Kiss. Um, so you listen to the show and get to the club, and be excited to maybe hear something that he dropped. And then super influential in terms of my what I aspired to do as a DJ, to blend like how he did. Um,
Those blends were butter,
Crazy,
butter,
crazy,
and writing records,
crazy,
unbelievable.
crazy.
With
So
that technology back then.
on Thorns, on
Hello.
Thorns, man. So with my little Techniques B1s, with the little spin wheel, speed joints, pitch control joints, just trying to practice and practice and practice to sound like that, to sound like him. I mean, I say it all the time. Tony uh, was a huge DJ influence for me. So going to Zanzibar to answer the question in brief, um, and I have man, yeah, so many Zanzibar stories for real. But I'll drop this one. I'll drop this one. I'll describe Zanzibar. Was it the Lincoln Motel, and all of that? You drove up and you just hear boom, boom, like the windows were rattling. Um, it was so crazy. And then again, you just have this excitement to just you couldn't wait to go in to jam. Um, yeah, not as big as the garage, but the sound was as powerful, and I just loved it. Right, um, so I was a Zanzibar head, straight up. Rolling from Brooklyn, going to Jersey, um, was what it was all about. So I remember. So this is my Zanzibar story, way different from my garage story, but this lets you know how serious a Zanzibar person I was. So I, my uncle had given me a 1972 Chevrolet Impala. I called her Ethel. Huge car, right? And so we were going out to Zan's on a Friday, with Ethel, and it was a particularly cold day. Um, and I couldn't get into my own car. Couldn't get in. I was supposed to go with my boy Ty, his girl, right? Ty comes through. We trying to get into my car with the key. You hear me? With the key. Can't get into the car at all. His girlfriend rolls up. Her father drops her off at the crib. He tries to help us. This is hours, Friday night, freezing fingers. You know, my boy was like, "Yo, let's break the window." My mom was like, "Are you crazy? You gonna break the window? The cops is not gonna even ask you no questions. You go, looks like you still in the car. Stop all that craziness." We were determined, right? Ty's girlfriend leaves. She goes home. She gives up. We out there still trying to get up into this car because it's Friday night. We got to get to the club. Um, Two guys walk by and they're like, "Yo, you need help getting into the car?" Again, you got to put it back into being young, right? And we're like, "Damn, what do we do?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, we need help." He's like, "Yo, you got money?" And we young, we got no real money. So he's like, "Yo, man, give me like $20, $10, whatever." So we give dude the money. He pulls out this thing, and it's a 72, right? So it's the locks that pop up, and he basically jimmies, and in 5 seconds the doors are open, right? And it's like, so you think about and so I think about this scene from Beverly Hills Cop where he jumps in the back seat of the cop car and he's like, ah. So we get into the car, Ah, we go to Zanzibar. It's cold. It's wintertime. We roll the windows down because clearly the locks froze. So we roll out to Newark with the windows down and we go to the parking lot and we leave the car parked with the windows down in Newark. Just say, yo, We Pray is still there, but we got to go check out Tony Humphries at Zanzibar. I don't care. That's how serious it was. Car in the parking lot in Newark with the windows open, but we at the club having the time of our lives. Having the time of our lives. Um, yeah, man, Zanzibar, Tony Humphries, huge influence. Um, as a party spot, huge influence as a DJ, huge influence in terms of the sound that I loved, discovering all those cats at the time, Blaze and all of that. So that's Zanzibar. That's my Zanzibar story.
We gotta end this story. Was the car still there?
Ah, the car, the, we got home. The car was still there.
That's the best story ever. That's the best story ever. That's the best story
Hmm.
So we've talked about your party in Brooklyn, we've talked
Mm-hmm.
about the garage, we've talked about Jersey. What is the Jersey sound? And is there a Brooklyn sound?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, the Jersey sound would be vocals with sort of soulful, jazzy, um, gospely feel. I mean, if you think about Kenny Bobian, we think about Josh Balan, we think about Kevin Hedge, we think about Ace Beats, we think about, you know, yeah, just songs, like which was different than like the raw energy of the early house. It was a little bit more New York radio friendly, we'll say. Like early Blaze hits, "If You Should Need a Friend" and all of that were radio hits. As well as club joints, right? Um, so I would say that yeah, the that Jersey sound of the time, like Jovan running, um, labels like Easy Street, Abbey at Moving Records, like there was you talk about a Brooklyn Renaissance of the '90s. There was sort of a Jersey musical renaissance, perhaps. I mean, I don't know if it's ever been put that way, but when I think about that time, um, and what Tony and Timmy were able to offer via the radio, right? Like we talk about the power of the radio at the time too, um, and that music was also on the radio was just really impactful. Like the sound of the youth that was danceable and also on the radio, right? That was a powerful element for its growth and its reach, um, certainly at the time. So a Brooklyn sound now. I mean, you go any place in the world and you say Brooklyn in the house, there's always so Brooklyn stands up wherever we are in the world. So, in terms of a sound, man, there's so many DJs that have come from Brooklyn, producers that come from Brooklyn, but I think because of how big Brooklyn is and how many different types of cultures and sounds, it's hard to put a finger on a Brooklyn sound per se. Like I wanna claim, the organic, percussive, but I can't even claim that as Brooklyn. I know that my experience in terms of playing parties in Brooklyn, um, perhaps but yeah, but there's so many. Yeah, there. I don't know if there's a Brooklyn sound. I don't
Okay.
know if there's one Brooklyn sound. Because what Dennis Ferrer lived in Brooklyn. I think Sting International is a Brooklyn person. Like you think about Bobby Condis. He was on the radio. So I guess sort of the Brooklyn sound, if I was to, it has a sort of Afro diasporic because like I think you have to put in like the African elements, you have to put in some Latin elements, you have to put in some Caribbean elements um, in the sound vibration. Yeah, yeah, I would say that there's sort of a more ethnic approach. Yeah, maybe I would say that. Today I would say that. Tomorrow, maybe something else. But I think today that works.
No, that's fair. Next question. What is soulful house?
Soulful House is the root of the thing. Um, it has been relegated in some ways to soulful, to you know some lower runged designation, but it is where it all starts. Like everything else springs from that rib. Soulful House is house. Black and brown people created it, and so connecting to gospel, the blues, jazz. It's black music, right? Its popularity, then and and our welcome, how we are so welcoming as a culture, certainly allows for other people to have their own interpretation. To some people might say co-op, people might say do their version of it, but then in doing their version of it, then the root becomes relegated to perhaps lesser than. I might not say that because so for we everyone points to Larry Levan, right? Um, he was Frankie Knuckles, these foundational folk that before there was a designation, before the things were segregated, they were doing house music. But we look at those records as, oh yeah, that was soulful for sure. Um, they were in it when it was, teeter tottering on pop, right? Like a certain pop acceptance, But as it then became pop, then to the sonics changed, who it's for changed, and so as the people, as I talk about, we go through the years, um, and the parties, and and the producers and the DJs, like yeah, we can say the experience of the Zanzibar, of the Shelter, of the Paradise Garage certainly had such an impact on um, the way in which we communicated with one another musically, the way in which we were able to commune and share space, the sonics that allow for that to happen. It's like, um, you got folk going up to Harlem on tours to go to like the black church, right? Like you you don't have to go on tour to go to a black church. But you do that because it's different than just going to church. And so Soulful House is like that black church, because you want to go to get that experience, that sound, that vibration. It might not be celebrated economically. We might not be playing at the biggest stages, but you can't deny in the history that it is the root of the thing, born from black and brown queer folk, men and women, right? Um, its spirit of openness, of togetherness, of freedom certainly allows for other folk to, come in the mix, which is a fantastic thing. But then when you throw the business of the game into it, when you throw the money of the game into it, and then music business changes. You're like, okay, well, we got to call it something. We got to call it soulful. Man, it's how, I mean, you get it because you want to be able to market and promote. So you got techno. I mean, you got techno kids out there that have no idea. There's this YouTube video when kids realize that black people created techno. Um, so it's like that same kind of vibration of, well, it came from, black and brown people, but then it's sort of relegated to the back. you know, and so, but it is the foundation of all these things, all these dance movements that we're talking about, EDM, whatever. It all comes from that thing, you know. So that's my answer.
I approve this message.
Mm.
What is global soul?
Well, global soul is a reflection of the fusion of cultures that I am personally. And so when I talk about my New York City upbringing, when I talk about being first generation American, it is that paella, that palau of things. It's when you grow up and you got peoples that are Puerto Rican, Cuban, Dominican. You got folk from Nigeria, from Ghana, um, all up in the neighborhood. Your influences, your world view, right? Like it becomes bigger than just the block. If I'm gonna go to my man's mom's, go to my boy's house, and and she's Puerto Rican, she gonna give me, and I'm gonna eat there. I'm be exposed to something other than Chef Boyardee, right? If I'm gonna go my boy Saji and I'm going to eat over his house, I'm gonna get some Indian, and so uh, in terms of culture being exposed, global soul is just sort of having a musical awareness of the sounds from around the world, allow myself to be influenced by them, to be touched by them. So, Latin and African and Brazilian, Caribbean rhythms fused with soulful vocals and all of that kind of stuff sort of comprises what I call global soul. Um, and you see it in a variety of movements. Maybe it's not formally called that, but you look at some of the what they call Afro house, and they're doing it their way, right? It's folk are doing it their way. You look at what they're calling Afro beats, and you see that fusion of sounds and vibes and cultures. You know, I really just called it. I called it what I felt. Like what it was for me, right? Being a global soul myself, um, I wanted to put a name on it because now we go back to the thing, right, where you asked me about Soulful House, and you think about when you say house music to, folk that don't live the culture, that are not in the scene, they very often think about it um, in a couple ways. They think about it as old music from back in the day, they think about it as gay music, whatever that's called, or they think about it as like some big room stuff. Um, and so, I mean, things evolve, right? You go from, bebop to, like things evolve over time. And so, how to describe it to a new audience, I thought was important, to give it a different way of framing this thing that I love, this thing that I do, so that folks can say, all right, because people have short attention spans. People, as I talk about the Tea Party, a lot of people don't really connect the dots of then to now. So, unless you really of it, when you say house, you just think about, follow me. Like wherever you heard it first, you go back to that. Like when it was most popular. You think about Girl Our House, you Jungle Brothers and stuff like that. While there's a whole generation or two that continue to live this thing, like this thing has, every couple of years they talk about, how this thing is dying or dead. Um, but how could you kill culture, right? How could you really kill a thing um, that brings people together? So sometimes you just have to name it what it needs to be named for today, so people could say, "All right, I'm down for that," because young people often want to sort of feel like they discovered the thing, right? When I think about my one of my goddaughters, and they did there's a couple records, right? When they redid Black Coffee Superman with Drake, and her excitement of this thing as new, when like I know it's not new, or when what's my man name did that record Fade, and he did sample Barbara Tucker and all of that. The young kids is like, oh, this is some newness. Um, well, no, it's you know it's deep inside. It's not new at all. But I do so from a marketing perspective. From a bringing new people into the thing, uh, where they feel like, okay, this is for me, or this is mine. This is not my parents' house. This is my house. Um, you know, Global Soul was my way of trying to give it a new name, give it a new designation to attract new people, and I think it worked. For when that happened, the parties we were doing, the label, and all of that, was libation, the party, the home of global soul was the tagline. The our interest was to introduce the sound to a younger audience. Much like it was introduced to me. You know, um, and like I talk about the spirit of the culture, the spirit of the thing. Again, for me, it was I fell in love with it before it had the name. Like we didn't have anything to call it. We just did that thing. We just went to the club. Um, and so, now that people need names to sort of be attracted to a thing, that was my offering of a name to attract some folk to it. I think, we did a decent job. Um, certainly when, like, in our time.
What is libation?
So, Libation is an event that Manchild Black and I started 15 years ago. Yeah, this would be our 15th year. Um, we started in, man, what's that club, Lord? Element, which is the basement of this club, the Vault. We did a few parties there, and then we moved it to Sapphire Lounge, And then from there, we went to the so special space, Sullivan Room. And so libation, again, just sort of part of the tradition that we came out of, spaces that we loved, energies that we loved, to bring people together, to be open and free to play music. It was a great, I always wanted to have a residency. So we talk about these legendary cats. We talk about Timmy Regisford. We talk about Tony Humphries. We talk about Larry Levan. Um, and so libation was, my opportunity to sort of enter into that conversation at that level. Um, yeah, in New York for New York City. It's also felt like I was in purpose. Um, you know, uh, man, child. Being who he is as an artist, as a creative, as a vocalist. We were both label mates at West End Records. Kevin had sort of put us in conversation with one another, and he wanted to do an event. I was still thinking about, going back to starting at the Tea Party again. So I was slow to agreeing, and then, I prayed on it, and the rest is history. You say yes, and then again, it was just an organic build. Lightning in a bottle. Um, just sort of reflecting the ethos of the day. Post 9/11. Um, you know, uh, Obama era. Again, another community building event. Um, and just a bigger platform. And I was always interested in inviting different DJs, different performers, that reflected the sound that we were into, and it was such a fun time. It was such a powerful, magical time. I've been so blessed when I just having this conversation with you, and just kind of going uh, down memory lane a little bit. Just to feel so blessed to sort of have different moments in my life where I felt like I was right where I was supposed to be. Libation was right, was the thing that I was supposed to do. It has blessed me, continues to bless me as an event, as a platform. Um, Global Soul, as we're, making the connective tissue in our conversation, with Tea Party. After Tea Party ended, producing music, started a label, Tea Party Music, really to sort of honor that time in my life. We changed the name after the Tea Party political movement started, and didn't want to be associated with that. And so, since I already was calling it Global Soul, we just called it Global Soul Music. And then Libation was the home of Global Soul Music. So, just had multiple platforms to produce music for a label, to have a residency to play the music, to have an audience to test the production out on, just like I saw Larry and Timmy and Tony and all these cats do. Um, it was just a powerful moment for my DJ career, um, for my production career. So it still has, given me wings in this life. So then I'm able to travel the world and sort of be an ambassador to the sound, and while at the same time, having a home, right? So I traveled, loved it, but didn't have to do it because, you know, I'm home. I had a home. Um, and just in the spirit of the earlier question, at the Sullivan Room, um, you walk to this club, double doors, you open up. We had our door entry right there. Our sister Caroline, she was at the door. Afro Mosaic Soul, they were hosting the party, a lifestyle collective, dance collective. Um, group of folk that I knew since they were teens. They used to come to the tea party, a lot of them, and then they formed a dance collective. I think born out of a spinner party. If I don't want to misrepresent their origin story, but they were hosts for our party. Again, the interest to bring different energies together to present an event that was welcoming to all. And that was what we learned. It's what I learned from places like the garage, like Zanzibar, like the shelter, like in the tradition. So you come to the doors, you go down the stairs, there's a basement club. In the earliest iteration, the DJ booth was on the right. So I saw everybody as they came in. There was a gallery space on the left side that people could kind of lounge and chill. Later on, they moved the booth to the back side of the club, um, and smaller, you know. But we had everybody come through. Black Coffee, hundreds and hundreds of people. Ocean Latte, hundreds and hundreds of people. It was just um, Blue Vega, and then Rodney Don performed, Kevin Everett performed. It was just a reflection of the time, the magic of that time, in our way, you know, in our way.
Awesome. Those are the questions that I have for this part one. I have another 100 questions. We'll do part two in like 6 months or so. Anything else you want to cover before we sign off?
Hmm, what do I want to cover? Um, I guess in this moment, because we talked a lot about the origins in the past. I suppose in this, just bringing awareness to where we are right now. We are, still in the midst of a pandemic. Like I said, my last events in person was last March. Um, I'm in Grenada right now, where my parents are from, helping with my dad to take care of him presently. My sister is here. Um, and, what do you do, right? Like you want to build community, you want to bring people together, and you're in the middle of a pandemic. Um, and so I thought to myself that I would, do some live streaming, which I had never done before. And that started. I came back here like March 17th, and that started immediately. Um, Maybe the week or a couple of days after D Nice did his quarantine sessions, and that was a phenomenon. And I wasn't, like everybody has to do their part. Everyone has, I was on IG, um, and it was really an offering. It's like, what could I do for the world? What could I do for my people? What could I do for the community? What could I offer? And so the live streaming was what I thought I could offer. Um, and in the midst of that, I realized how much I get, like how much I needed, the energy, the love from the community that I've been a part of for all these years. Um, and so the same spirit of community building, though we're not in the same room, still applied. I still felt people's energies. I did something and do something called the People's Playlist, where I invite people to give me a list of songs that I curate. Um, so, like last August, the whole month, people, like, there were tons. It was a lot of work. I literally um, had folk co-pilot the experience, right? So I didn't. It was like not centering myself in the middle of the experience. So someone was riding shotgun with me, and I was simply interpreting their list of songs. So I ended up. So we did that the month of August. I ended up putting together a book called the People's Playlist, which folk could get into, and that idea evolved. During the election cycle last year, um, As I moved platforms from IG to Twitch, we did the praise dance, the People's Playlist praise dance, where people sent videos of themselves dancing. Um, and then this March, along with artist Navis White, we did the People's Playlist, the Artist Edition, where artists were in conversation with songs that I play while they were in their creative process. So they videotape themselves, whether or not you're a painter or a quilter, or um, and you presented both a song and the work in video. So we call that the People's Playlist Artist Edition. That also has a book. Um, so again, I think for this conversation, um, I guess I like to leave the people with the power of community, the power of the people, the magic of that this community has and holds when we come together with peace and unity and love. Um, how that the music heals, uh, and it's most healing when we are in, when we're communing with one another, whether or not we're in person uh, or in virtual land. It translates through the wires, through the cables. It's not the same. It's a hybrid. Um, but for me, it certainly held me down. And the community has continued to um, hold me down, and I'm so proud to be a part of it, to do my part in this thing um, that we call house. So that's it.
That was a perfect way to end it. Thank you so much. All right. Enjoy your weekend, sir.
You too, sir.
All right. Take care. Peace out.
I know. Be well, bro.